In 1969, a Monsanto scientist dropped fish into a creek behind their plant in Anniston, Alabama, and watched every single one of them die in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. He filed the report. He noted the gills had disintegrated, and Monsanto buried it and kept running the plant for 2 more years. 35,000 people lived downstream. Not one executive ever faced a criminal charge. So why has no one ever told you this? Monsanto by the 1960s was American industry in its most confident form. The company that put the agri in agriculture, the chemistry behind the Green Revolution. Their products were feeding the world, that was the story. Fortune 500, congressional allies, scientists on retainer. They had a public image so clean it was almost sacred. The kind of company that didn't just sell products, they sold the idea that chemistry itself was progress. That belief was worth billions. And they spent decades protecting it at any cost. The chemical was PCB, polychlorinated biphenyl. Monsanto was the only domestic manufacturer in the United States. They had been producing it in Anniston since 1935. PCBs went into electrical equipment, plastics, industrial fluids. Monsanto made hundreds of millions of dollars on them annually. By the early 1960s, their own scientists were raising flags internally, fish dying in local waterways, workers getting sick, soil samples coming back wrong. Then in 1966, they ran the controlled experiment. Fish dropped directly into Snow Creek running off the back of the plant. 3 minutes 30 seconds, every fish dead. Gills disintegrated. The scientists wrote it up. An executive read the results and signed off on a response. The response was 5 words. "We can't afford to lose $1 of business." They did not stop production. They did not tell the public. And here's the part they really didn't want out. Instead of disclosure, Monsanto built what insiders would later call a liability containment strategy. They paid local health officials to stay quiet. They commissioned their own studies, studies they controlled, studies they could shelve if the results came back wrong. The EPA didn't exist until 1970. Before that, there was almost no federal framework that could compel a company to go public with internal contamination data. Monsanto knew the window. They used every day of it. And when the EPA was finally created, Monsanto's lobbyists were already in Washington shaping what the new agency could and couldn't touch. The contamination continued. The silence held. The profits came in. Now here's the twist that reframes everything you just heard. Anniston, Alabama was and still is a predominantly black community. 68% of the residents near the plant were African American. This was not accidental geography. The plant had been sited in a low-income, politically marginalized neighborhood because those communities had less power to resist, less access to legal recourse, and less likelihood of being believed if they came forward. Monsanto did not stumble into Anniston. They chose it. The contamination that followed wasn't a failure of oversight. It was a calculation, and the people running the numbers knew exactly what the human cost was. When the story finally broke in 2002, not through any government investigation, but through journalists who obtained Monsanto's own internal documents, the scale was staggering. PCBs were found in the blood of virtually every resident tested. In some, levels were hundreds of times above what regulators considered safe. The local creek was so saturated, the EPA classified the surrounding land as one of the most contaminated sites in the country. PCBs are linked to cancer, neurological damage, immune dysfunction, developmental disorders in children. The people of Anniston had been living inside a slow chemical experiment for decades, and the company running it had documentation the entire time proving they knew. That same 1969 fish memo, the one with the 3 minutes and 30 seconds, the one they buried, it was in the files the whole time. In 2003, Monsanto and its spun-off chemical subsidiary Solutia settled with 20,000 Anniston residents for $700 million, the largest environmental settlement in Alabama history. $700 million sounds like accountability. It isn't. Divided across 20,000 plaintiffs, it comes to roughly $35,000 per person for a lifetime of exposure, for cancers, for children raised in contaminated soil, for a community told for decades that nothing was wrong. No criminal referrals were made. The executives who signed those internal memos, who chose profit over disclosure, who wrote that they couldn't afford to lose $1 of business, they retired. They kept their pensions. Some were celebrated inside the industry, and Monsanto itself was acquired by Bayer in 2018 for $63 billion. The Anniston settlement was a line item. The liability was restructured. The brand disappeared into something larger. The system didn't fail. The system performed exactly as designed. The internal memo is public record now. You can read it. The fish experiment, the gills, the 3 minutes and 30 seconds, the 5 words about not losing $1 of business. Researchers have read it. Journalists have written about it. The residents of Anniston lived it. But the men who wrote it died free. The company that authorized it became a bigger company. And the legal structure that lets corporations price human exposure as a settlement cost and call it closure, that structure is still intact. Somewhere right now there is another memo, another creek, another community that nobody is listening to yet. The only question is how long before someone buries that one too.